All right, buckle up, everybody, because we're about to take a deep dive into a topic that's, well, pretty hefty. We're talking childhood obesity. But we're ditching the usual finger-wagging lectures, okay? We're going way beyond clean your plate and digging into the nitty-gritty.
You know, we've got medical journals, global policy recommendations, even some economic analyses. It's a lot more complex than most people realize.
It really is. And one of the biggest surprises for me, honestly, was learning that childhood obesity isn't just an issue in, those affluent countries with all the fast food and screen time.
Right, a stereotype. But our sources are painting a very different picture.
Yeah, this is a global issue, and it's hitting lower and middle income countries particularly hard. One of the medical journals we looked at said almost 9 out of 10 kids in these countries are dealing with overweight or obesity.
9 out of 10. Think about that. It's staggering.
And another source pointed to a 50% rise in overweight children under 5 in Africa just since the year 2000, just one generation.
That's a huge jump. Really underscores how urgent this issue is, especially for families who are already facing so many challenges.
Absolutely. And it definitely busts the myth that this is just a problem of, the developed world.
Exactly. Which brings us to another myth we need to dismantle, that eat less, move more, oversimplification.
Oh, yeah. The classic. Like it's just a matter of willpower.
But sources make it clear it's so much more than that. We're talking a whole web of factors. Genetics, epigenetics.
Epigenetics. Now, hold on. Sounds a bit intimidating. Can we break that down a bit?
It's really fascinating, actually. Think of it like this. Epigenetics is like a set of instructions that sit on top of your DNA, almost like software that tells your genes what to do, whether to switch on or off.
Okay, so software for your genes.
Yeah, kind of. And what's really wild is that those instructions can be influenced by things like a mother's BMI during pregnancy or whether a baby is breastfed.
Wait, so a mom's health during pregnancy can actually affect her child's genes related to weight. That's a whole other level of responsibility.
It is. And these changes, they can have really long-term effects on how a child's body regulates weight, how the metabolism works.
So it's not just about the choices you make, but also about the environment you're exposed to even before you're born.
Exactly. It makes you think about that whole debate on personal responsibility in a new light, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so we've got this epigenetics thing playing a role. But you mentioned other factors too, like food environments. What exactly does that mean?
So imagine you're a kid, right? And you live in a neighborhood where fresh produce is miles away. The closest thing you've got to a grocery store is a gas station stocked with chips and candy.
Sounds familiar.
But hey, there's a fast food joint on every corner. That, my friend, is a food environment that makes healthy choices a lot harder.
I mean, talk about temptation. It's got to be tough, especially for families who might not have the time or the money to go hunting for those healthier options.
You're absolutely right. And our sources really highlight how these food deserts, as they're called, are a huge problem, especially in lower income communities. They just don't have the same access to affordable, nutritious food.
It makes me think about those studies that show the closer you live to fast food restaurants, the higher your BMI is likely to be.
Makes sense, right? It's hard to resist when unhealthy choices are cheap and easy to get.
It's almost like they're designed that way. And then there's the whole affordability issue. We all know healthy food can be more expensive.
It's a real barrier for families struggling to make ends meet.
It's like this vicious cycle. The people who are most vulnerable are also the ones most likely to be surrounded by unhealthy choices.
Exactly. And let's forget about the marketing, which is honestly relentless. Our sources talk about how kids are bombarded with ads for sugary drinks, fast food, processed snacks. It's everywhere, especially online.
It's like they're being conditioned from a young age to crave those unhealthy foods. No wonder we see all those studies linking food marketing to kids' preferences for junk food. It's scary, actually.
Yeah, it's a powerful force that can really undermine even the best intentions. So we've got epigenetics, food environments, marketing, all playing a role in this complex picture.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But it's also fascinating to see how these seemingly separate things are all connected. And we haven't even talked about families yet. Where do parents fit into all of this?
Well, parents are arguably the most influential figures in a child's life, especially when it comes to food, activity levels, even how they view their bodies.
Makes sense. Kids are like sponges. They pick up habits from their parents.
Totally. So if you've got a child growing up in a home where sugary drinks are the norm and vegetables are like a rare sighting.
In there.
Well, it's going to influence their choices.
For sure.
Yeah.
And what about activity levels? parents are mostly sedentary, are their kids more likely to follow suit?
That's a great point. Our sources actually highlight how parents' activity levels can actually predict their children's activity patterns. So yeah, if parents aren't active, kids are less likely to be active too.
It's in the fridge. It's also about the example parents are setting.
Absolutely. We need to empower parents to make healthy changes, not just for themselves, but for the whole family.
Right. And speaking of environments that influence kids, we can't forget about schools, can we? They play such a huge role.
For sure. They spend a big chunk of the day. They have a real opportunity to shape those healthy habits.
Oh boy.
Our sources talk a lot about how schools can promote healthy eating and physical activity. Things like incorporating nutrition education into the curriculum, offering healthier cafeteria choices, and just creating more opportunities for kids to move their bodies both during and after school.
It's about making wellness part of the culture of the school.
Exactly. And speaking of things that affect our overall well-being, we need to talk about sleep and sedentary behavior.
Sleep and sitting around too much?
Yeah.
How do those fit into this?
Well, it's a connection a lot of people overlook, but our sources really emphasize that not getting enough sleep and spending too much time glued to screens, it can contribute to weight gain in children.
So we're talking about what kids are eating, how much they're moving, how much they're sleeping, how much screen time they're getting. It's like a 2-4-7 challenge.
It really highlights how we need to think about this holistically. It's about the whole picture of a child's life.
Okay, listeners, I hope you're taking notes. Things are getting interesting here. We've seen that childhood obesity is a global issue, way more complex than that eat less, move more saying. We've looked at epigenetics, food environments, marketing, family dynamics, sleep, and even screen time. It's a lot. But what does it all mean?
It means we need to ditch the blame game and really understand how all these factors are interconnected. It's not about pointing fingers, it's about finding solutions that address the root causes.
And that's where we're headed next. We're going to dive into the different approaches for preventing and managing childhood obesity. Everything from policy changes to empowering individuals. Stay tuned. And we're back. Last time, we were really just starting to peel back the layers of this whole childhood obesity issue. I mean, it's complex, right? We've got epigenetics, those relentless marketing tactics.
But now we get to talk about solutions, which is always a good thing. Because even though all these factors we talked about can feel kind of overwhelming, our sources actually offer some real hope. They outline a whole bunch of strategies for both prevention and management, targeting different levels of this whole intricate system.
Okay, so it's not about finding that one magic bullet solution.
Right.
It sounds like we need a multi-pronged approach, like attacking this thing from all sides.
Exactly. We need changes at the individual level, with families, across communities, and yeah, even at the policy level. And actually, speaking of policy, that's a good place to start because it has the potential to create like really widespread change. What kind of recommendations are our sources suggesting?
Yeah, give us the policy lowdown.
Well, one common theme that keeps popping up is the need to create environments that, just make those healthy choices easier. Think about it. If those unhealthy foods are always cheaper, more accessible, and advertised everywhere you look,
right,
it's an uphill battle for anyone trying to prioritize health, especially families with limited resources.
It's like trying to run a marathon with weights strapped to your ankles. I'm seeing some specific examples in our sources too, like taxes on sugary drinks. Does that actually work?
Well, some studies have shown that it can be effective in reducing consumption, yeah. I mean, hit people's wallets and they might think twice about that extra soda.
Makes sense. What about regulations on food marketing that's specifically targeted at kids? We know that's a huge factor. Do those regulations actually do anything?
It's still a bit of a debate, honestly, but the idea is, if we can limit kids' exposure to all those persuasive messages, especially when they're young, we can sort of level the playing field a bit.
Right. Make it a little fairer. And of course, we've got to talk about healthy food options in schools. I mean, it seems so basic, but it's so important for kids to have access to good, nutritious food throughout the day. How can schools actually make that happen?
Well, our sources mention a bunch of different strategies. Some are about setting stricter nutrition standards for school lunches. Sounds good in theory, but can be tricky to actually put into practice. Others focus on limiting sugary drinks and unhealthy snacks, even those vending machines that are always calling your name.
Oh, tell me about it. Those vending machines are my weakness. So, okay, policy changes can help create a healthier environment, right? But what about working directly with families? What are some examples of those interventions?
A lot of the sources emphasize family-based programs that's on educating parents. It's about giving them the tools and knowledge they need to make lasting changes, like understanding healthy eating, learning to cook nutritious meals, figuring out portion control, that kind of thing.
It's about empowering parents, right? Not just telling them what to do.
Exactly. And some of these programs go a step further. They encourage families to eat meals together, be active together. It's about making healthy habits a family affair, something fun and supportive, not a chore.
I love that. It's not about lecturing kids about broccoli. It's about creating those positive experiences around healthy choices, something the whole family can enjoy. And that brings us back to, empowering individuals, which we touched on before. How can we help kids themselves take charge of their health?
Well, a lot of programs focus on, teaching children about nutrition, benefits of being active, but in a way that's fun and engaging. What's really interesting, though, is that some interventions focus on self-monitoring and goal setting, even for kids.
So giving kids the tools to make their own choices instead of just being told what to do, like, hey, here's a food journal. Let's see what happens when you swap out that soda for water.
Exactly. It's about giving them that sense of ownership, which is so important for long-term change. And it really reinforces the message that this isn't about blame. It's about giving people the knowledge and support they need to make healthy choices.
So I've got policy changes, family intervention programs, and this whole idea of individual empowerment. It's a lot, but it sounds like our sources go even deeper than that.
They do. They even delve into the ethics of marketing food to
powerful those marketing messages can be, especially with kids online all the time now.
And our sources raise some really tough questions, like what's the industry's responsibility here? Do we need stricter regulations to protect kids from those, often misleading marketing tactics?
It's a huge debate, one that probably deserves its own deep dive, honestly. But it's a good reminder that this isn't just a problem for individual families to solve. We need bigger changes, societal shifts in how we think about food, health, and the influence of these powerful industries. Okay, for the final part of our childhood obesity deep dive. And, after all that heavy stuff, those eye-opening statistics, the mind-blowing epigenetics, I'm actually feeling kind of hopeful, especially after exploring all those potential solutions we talked about, those policy changes, the individual empowerment strategies. It's a lot, but it feels like there's real potential for change here.
It is encouraging to see so much energy and innovation focused on this issue, that's for sure. And I think the more we understand how everything's connected, the better equipped we'll be to actually create lasting change.
It all comes back to that idea we talked about earlier, right? How those early life experiences can have a ripple effect, impacting not just a child's weight, but their whole health trajectory.
Exactly. Remember that whole conversation about epigenetics, mother's health during pregnancy, or whether a baby is breastfed can actually influence how their genes related to weight are expressed.
Yeah, blew my mind, honestly. And it made me wonder, if those early experiences can shape a child's biology in such a profound way, what are the long-term consequences? Not just for their weight, but for their overall health and well-being as they grow up.
Well, that's a question researchers are really digging into right now, and there's more evidence suggesting that these early influences, especially during those key developmental periods, can actually increase the risk of chronic diseases later in life. Things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, even certain types of cancer.
Wow, that's a sobering thought. It really highlights how important those early interventions are and creating supportive environments for families right from the start.
For sure. It's about investing in prevention, in research, and in those support systems that really empower families and give every child the best possible chance for a healthy life.
It really comes back to that idea of collective action, doesn't it? We can't just sit around waiting for these problems to develop. We need to be proactive in creating a healthier future for all kids.
Exactly. We need to shift our thinking, See this not just as a problem for individual families to solve, but as a shared responsibility that requires, system-wide solutions.
All right, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into childhood obesity. What a journey, right? We started with those alarming statistics, delved into some pretty complex science, explored policy recommendations, and even heard stories of individual empowerment. Phew, I'm exhausted.
And while there are definitely no easy answers here, amidst all that complexity, there's a lot of hope. We've learned so much about the factors that contribute to childhood obesity and all the different approaches people are using to address it. It's inspiring, actually.
It really is. Yeah. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from all of this, it's a sense of Empowerment, not overwhelm.